Catledge, members of the American Society, newspaper editors, ladies and gentlemen. The president of a great democracy such as ours, and the editors of great newspapers such as yours, owe a common obligation to the people. An obligation to present the facts, to present them with candor, and to present them in perspective. It is with that obligation in mind that I have decided in the last 24 hours to discuss briefly at this time the recent events in Cuba. On that unhappy island, as in so many other arenas of the contest for freedom, the news has grown worse instead of better. I have emphasized before that this was a struggle of Cuban patriots against a Cuban dictator. While we could not be expected to hide our sympathies, we made it repeatedly clear that the armed forces of this country would not intervene in any way. Any unilateral American intervention, in the absence of an external attack upon ourselves or an ally, would have been contrary to our traditions, to our international obligations. But let the record show that our restraint is not inexhaustible. Should it ever appear that the Inter-American of non-intervention merely excuses a policy action of this hemisphere fail to meet their commitment against outside penetration, clearly understood that this government will not hesitate in meeting its priorities, which are the of our nation. Should that time we end to be lectured, mentioned by character with stamped on the blood path, or would we expect the same which this of gallant G's must have championed as they were against heavy to pursue their attempts to regain freedom? Is not an island unto itself, and our concern is not by mere non-intervention or this is not in either in history. A band of freedom fighters has engaged the totalitarianism. It is not the first time communist tanks rolled over gallant men and women wanting to redeem the independence. Nor by any means the fight in the eternal of liberty against tyranny on the face of the globe, including Cuba itself, said that these were mercenaries. According to press reports, the final message from the refugees on the beach, rebel commander, wished to be evacuated. The answer was, I will leave this country. The reply of a mercenary. He has gone now to mountains, fighters, determined of those who gave their forgotten. Cuba must not be abandoned to the and we do not intend either. The Cubans have not yet spoken their final piece, and I have no doubt and the Revolutionary Council, Dr. Cardona, members of the families of the Revolutionary Council, I am informed by the doctor, are involved themselves in the will continue to speak for a free and independent. Meanwhile, Mr. Castro's attempt to blame this nation for the hatred which is one now regard his. But there are sobering episodes, lessons for us all to learn. Some may be still obscure and await further information. Some are clear today. It is clear that communism, underestimated, or anywhere else in the world, the advantages of its use and arrest prevents the spread of free deceit cannot be overlooked by those who expect the fall of every fanatic tyrant. If the self-discipline cannot maintain discipline of the male in economic, political, scientific, and all the other kinds of strength military, freedom will continue to rise. Secondly, it is this nation, with all the free nations of this, must take an and more realistic at the menace of communist intervention and the are not complacent about iron curtains and plains miles from their shore. A nation of Cuba's size is less a threat to our than it is for survival of other hemisphere. Primarily our security, but which is now today. It is as well as that we must show our the evidence is laced, and our Latin friends face the fact, postpone and elongate the real issue of survival hemisphere itself. Issue. Others, they go ground. Must build a hemisphere where freedom can flourish, and where any free nation, outside attack, can be assured that all of our resources stand ready to respond requests for assistance. Third and finally, it is clearer than ever we face a relentless in every corner that goes far of armies, clear armament, and in the nuclear, but primarily the version and a host of steadily advanced, picking off vulnerable one by one situations which do not our own armed in the power hallmark of this offensive, power and discipline, the legit of exploited, the trappings of self are employed, power of discontent is repressed, all self-determined, and the pollution of hope is as in Cuba into a reign of terror. Those who on instruction staged automatic in the street of a small group of young to regain should roll call refugees who can act to Hungary, North Korea, Vietnam, or to Poland, to any of the other lands from which a steady stream pours forth, eloquent testimony, cruel oppression, sway in their homeland. We dare not fail the insidious nature of this new and deeper struggle. We dare not fail new concepts, new tools. Urgency we will need to compete, whether in Cuba, Vietnam. We dare not fail to realize the struggle is every day in villages and markets, day and in classrooms all over. The message layout. Rising den of communism in Asia and Latin America. These messages are all the complacent, self-indulgent societies swept away history. Only the determined, the courageous, visionary who determine the nature of our struggle will survive. The task faces for this administration. No other challenge is more of our every effort. Too long to our eyes. No military need. Armies prepared to cross on missiles posed. Now that this is no longer that our security, piece by piece, without the fault of a missile or the single border, we intend to profit from this. We intend to and reorient of all kinds. And our institutions in this community. We intend to intensify a struggle more difficult than war, where disappointment will offer. For us, that we in the free world possess the necessary resources, and it comes from a belief in the freedom of man. And I am equally convinced history will record that this bit reached in the late night and the early 1960s. Let me then make clear, as the President of the United States, that I am determined to bring survival and success, regardless of the cost, regardless of the peril. Reverend Mesa, a generous invitation in my views. All religious issue. Necessarily and proper. The chief topic here tonight. I want to emphasize that I believe far more critical issues. 60 campaign. The spread of communist influence now festers only goes to Florida. Humiliating treatment of our president by those our power. Children I saw in West. The old people with their doctor's bills. Forced to give up their and America with too few and too late to the moon. Issues which should decide, and they are not for war and ignorance and despair. No religious barrier. As far as I am a Catholic has ever been elected. The real issues have been obscured, perhaps deliberately, less responsive. So it is apparent for me to state once again, not what kind of church, for that should be in me, but America. I believe in. I believe in an America where the separation of is absolute. Catholic prelate Should he be Catholic? And no would tell us for whom to vote. Church or church school, granted any public fund, political preference. And no man is denied public merely because he differs from the president him, or the people of him. And in America, the Catholic Protestant, when no either request actions on the Pope, the ecclesiastical source. The religious body will directly or of its officials. Religious liberty is indivisible against one church as an act against all. For while this year against whom the fiction is pointed, for years it has been, and someday be again, a Jew or a Quaker or a Baptist. Or as Virginia's harassers, for example, Ferguson's statute of today I'm a day, but tomorrow, until of our harmonious society, apart, great national peril. Finally, I believe where religious will someday end, all men and all churches equals the same right to the church. So there is no anti-Catholic, no black voting, and where Catholics and Jews and the pastoral left will refrain from disdain and division, which have so often marred their lives, and promote the idea of brotherhood. That is the kind of America, a kind of presidency, in a great object that must be neither humble by making it the instrument by arbitrarily withholding its occupancy from the members of any one religious group. I believe in a president whose own religion is his own private affair, imposed upon him by the nation, nor imposed by the nation as a condition of office. Would not look with favor upon a working to subvert guarantees of religion, nor would our sisters permit him to do so. And neither do I look upon those Article 6 of the Constitution by requiring even by independent. So if they disagree with God, they should be working to repeal it. I want a chief executive. Public acts are responsible and obligated to who can attend any service or dinner. His office may appropriately be fulfillment of his presidential is not limited by any ritual or obligation. This is the kind of American, and this is I fought for in the South, and the kind my brother died. No, we might have a debate, but we did not. Or that we to a disloyal group that threatened, I quote, the freedom for which our forefathers died. And in fact, this is the kind of America for which our forefathers did die. When they fled here to escape religious test oaths that denied office to members of less favored institution, the Bill of Rights, the Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom. And when they fought at the shrine I visited today, the Alamo, for side by side with Bowie and Crockett died Fuentes and McCafferty and Bailey and Bedidio and Carey, but no one knows whether they were Catholics or not, for there was no religious test there. I ask you tonight to follow in that tradition, to judge me on the basis of 14 years in the Congress, on my declared stand against an ambassador to the Vatican, against unconstitutional aid to parochial schools, and against any boycott of the public schools, which I attended myself. And instead of doing this, do not judge me on the basis of these pamphlets and public have all seen the carefully selected quotations out of context from the American. I do not consider these other quotations binding upon my public acts. Why should you? But let me say, with respect to other countries, that I am wholly opposed to the state being used by any religious group, Catholic or Protestant, to compel, prohibit, or prosecute the free exercise of any other religion. And that goes for any persecution at any time by anyone in any country. And I hope that you and I condemn with equal fervor those nations which deny their presidency to Protestants and those which deny it to Catholics. And rather than cite the misdeeds of those who differ, I would also cite the record of the Catholic Church in such nations as France and Ireland, and the independence of such statesmen as de Gaulle and Adenauer. But let me stress again that these are my views. For contrary to common newspaper usage, I am not the Catholic candidate for president. I am the Democratic Party's candidate for president, who happens also to be a Catholic. I do not speak for my church on public matters, and the church does not speak for me. Whatever issue may come before me as president, if I should be elected,
on birth control, divorce, censorship, gambling, or any other subject, I will make my decision in accordance with these views, in accordance with what my conscience tells me to be in the national interest, and without regard to outside religious pressure or dictates. And no power or threat of punishment could cause me to decide otherwise. But if the time should ever come, and I do not concede any conflict to be remotely possible, when my office would require me to either violate my conscience or violate the national interest, then I would resign the office, and I hope any other conscientious public servant would do likewise. But I do not intend to apologize for these views to my critics of either Catholic or Protestant faith, nor do I intend to disavow either my views or my church in order to win this election. If I should lose on the real issues, I shall return to my seat in the Senate, satisfied that I tried my best and was fairly judged. But if this election is decided on the basis that 40 million Americans lost their chance of being president on the day they were baptized, then it is the whole nation that will be the loser in the eyes of Catholics and non-Catholics around the world, in the eyes of history, and in the eyes of our own people. But if, on the other hand, I should win this election, then I shall devote every effort of mind and spirit to fulfilling the oath of the presidency, practically identical, I might add, with the oath I have taken for 14 years in the Congress. For without reservation, I can, and I quote, solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution, so help me God.